Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back again. This time I'm going to be continuing on with the chronological order of the Lord of the Rings or Middle Earth. I've already talked about the series, The Rings of Power. I've talked about The Hobbit, including all three movies. Now I'm going to be talking about the Fellowship of the Ring. Now, in the book, we start with what is a Hobbit. An interesting fact is that, according to the biography about J.R.R. Tolkien, the way that he began all this Middle Earth saga is by he was a professor at Oxford, and he was grading some papers. Now, apparently, it was a nice spring day. He opened up his window, and as he was grading, he all of a sudden got inspired and wrote Hobbit. What is a Hobbit? And he started describing what a Hobbit was. It was a very short stature, huge feet, hairy feet, thick skin that allowed it to walk on grass and stones on hard surfaces. That it was they were able to remain unseen by people or by any other races. That hobbits were quiet. That they were so bonded with nature that their steps are so silent that not even elves with their keen ears could hear them. When we go to the beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring, we start with Bilbo and the long-awaited party. Now, Bilbo was going to, I believe it was 111 years old or something like that. At any rate, he was very old, even for a hobbit. But he didn't seem that old, which began a lot of rumors about him. Now, at that time, Bilbo had his successor, his heir, living with him for many, many years. Uh, he happened to be Frodo Baggins. Frodo Baggins, it was never explained in the movies, but in the books, his parents had drowned and therefore they were dead. Bilbo, having heard of this news, he went to pick up his favorite nephew, which happened to be Frodo, and took him to live with him in Bag End, which is where he lived in the Shire. So they did, and they lived a happy life, a comfortable life, a homey life. One with comforts, with food, warmth, people they knew. They lived life in a familiar way. Nothing of the ordinary, nothing that no respectable hobbit would dare to live. Well, because of the long awaited party, Bilbo's birthday party. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's not just Bilbo's party. It just so happens that that same day, it's it's both Bilbo's and Frodo's birthday party. They both have the same birthday. Gandalf appears, and he they know him. Everybody knows him. He brings his fireworks, his magical fireworks. They have the party, and Bilbo does something really unexpected. He says his goodbyes. He does his long speech, making jokes at everybody's expenses, making jokes for people to laugh. But at the end, he disappears. I mean, literally, he disappears right in front of their eyes. He just out of nowhere. Gandalf realizes what is going on, and he follows. Well, he actually goes over to Bag End, to the Hobbit hole, and that's where he finds Bilbo getting his stuff ready. Now, Bilbo, he's getting ready to go back to the Misty Mountains, one last journey. But before he leaves, he has to leave one crucial thing. One that Gandalf had warned him about since the very beginning, but also something that Gandalf had made an agreement that Bilbo would leave to Frodo, that he wouldn't take him with him. and that was the ring that he had. Now, Gandalf knew from the very beginning, since The Hobbit, from since very back when, that Bilbo had picked up a magical ring that allows him to be invisible. He still didn't know that it was the one ring to rule them all, but he knew that magical rings could be dangerous. And so the agreement was Bilbo was going to leave the ring. Nobody mentions it. Nobody. And Bilbo did. He did leave a letter, leaving everything to Frodo, but also leaving the ring. Except that he didn't leave the ring. Not yet. When Gandalf points that out, Bilbo is a little bit hesitant, but he does leave the ring at the end. When Frodo comes back, Gandalf greets him and tells him, well, he's gone. And Frodo is now the heir. He's now the owner of Bag End. Now, many years pass. And by this, I mean, by this time, he's already in his 50s, more or less. But again, he's just as young as when he was in his 30s. So what gives? Again, rumors were starting to spread that there was something unnatural going on with Frodo, just as it did with Bilbo. Maybe he's going to disappear one day like Bilbo did. Frodo realized that something was going on, and Gandalf did talk to him. Gandalf eventually returns. He had research on the ring and told him, this could be what I think it is, and I hope it's not. They put it to a test. They throw the ring in the furnace. Well, not the furnace, but the fireplace. When they pick up the ring and notice that it's very cold, it didn't warm up with the fire, but it did reveal this scripture. Now, nobody could read it except Gandalf. It said a dark and ancient tongue that nobody speaks anymore. And Gandalf realizes that this is his worst nightmare. This is the one ring to rule them all. The one ring to bind them. This is Sauron's ring. As scary this might sound, Frodo does agree that he can't stay in the Shire. If it's going to attract, dark creatures like orcs and goblins, he doesn't want his home to be destroyed. He doesn't want his neighbors, his friends, he doesn't want anybody to get hurt because of him. He takes the brave decision to plan out his exit. Now, in the book, in the movie, it does seem like he just leaves and runs away. But in the book, it actually takes several months. He does his planning, he leaves a will. He says that he's going to go live with distant relatives, which happen to be Merry and Pippin. They help him move. And once he's in his new home, that's when he leaves. Except that Merry and Pippin follow him, as well as Sam. Sam was already obliged to go, even though Sam really wanted to go anyway, because elves. He wants to meet the elves. But Merry and Pippin weren't supposed to follow them, and they did. And so they're off on the journey. Now, one of the things is that they do reach this forest where the trees are kind of wild. They say that the river makes the trees, it makes the trees grow taller and wicker. They're just wicked. There's something wrong with that forest. And actually, Frodo is almost eaten by a willow. Well, not eaten, but he's at the river. He does feel drowsy. The willow that's next by is enveloping him and kind of pulling him inside the tree. But they do manage to get him out, and they do manage to get out of the forest. If you ask why they're in the forest in the first place, because they don't do that in the film, it's because they know that there's dark creatures waiting for them on the roads. And so in order to bypass them, they're cutting across the forest. That way they can reach the next town. and that was their way of doing it. So they make it out. They make it out alive and well, and they make it out to the next town. They make it to the Prancing Pony. Now, in the Prancing Pony, that's where they were supposed to meet Gandalf. Gandalf has been gone and has not showed up. However, they do meet a stranger called Strider. Now, Strider is kind of odd in the sense that he seems dangerous, he seems mysterious. They're not sure to trust him. But later that night, they do end up trusting him after he helps them escape from these very dark creatures, dark and tall creatures. And these dark creatures, they are, well, how should I say that? Let's just say that without spoiling who they are the servants of Sauron. There's a total of 9 of them, if you wanted to know. Now, these creatures were meant to kill Frodo. They didn't. So what gives? They leave town. They are alive. Strider now is with them. They make it over to this one ancient point called Weathertop. And that is where, again, they're met up with the same dark creatures. Now, to give them a name, just so it's easier to describe them, we'll call them Nazgul. The Nazgul find them, and as Frodo puts on the ring in order to get away, because he knows how important it is for him to get to Rivendell. That's where they want to go, Rivendell. The Nazgul all of a sudden look at him as if they could see him. Not just that, he is the target. They know he is the target, and they're after him. One of them thus manages to stab him with the sword, with a knife. But, Strider does manage to get rid of them. They all fight them off. And now they're on a race, really, to Rivendell. Rivendell is one of the last places where you find elves. Not wandering elves, but it's like one of the last remaining elven cities. In the movie, you have Arwen, Elrond's daughter, find Frodo, and then they gallop all the way. However, in the book, Arwen, there is no Arwen who does that. Instead, they do barely make it on time to the river, where with the joint magic between Gandalf and Elrond, they manage to create like these horses made of water to run over the Nazgul. Now that the Nazgul, they're not dead, but their physical bodies have been destroyed. So now that they've delayed the Nazgul, Frodo has time to rest. Except that he can't rest, because that stab that he received, he now feels a lot of pain, and now it's basically as if it were cursed. Now, he does get better, and he finds himself with Bilbo once more. But Bilbo is a little bit different. Bilbo is no longer as young looking as he used to look. It's as almost as if all the years that have been hidden away have all of a sudden crashed into him. And that's actually the reason why Bilbo is in Rivendell. He was on his way to the Misty Mountains, but by the time he got to Rivendell, his age had caught up with him, and now he no longer has the strength to travel. It's unfortunate, but at least he arrived to a safe place. Now, Rivendell is important because it is this meeting point. It's not just Elrond and Gandalf and the hobbits. You have elves coming in, dwarves coming in, an army of men coming in. And now the council begins. The Council of the Ring. In this meeting, it's Frodo, Gandalf, Elrond, Gimli the dwarf, Legolas the elf, Strider, who we now know his name Aragorn. He's a human. Um, Boromir, another human from Gondor. I think I've already said that. Aragorn, Gandalf. There might be several more, but the thing is, they're in session. They're saying what to do with the ring. Some of them, like Boromir, are hanging on to the idea of using the ring to against Sauron. Gimli wants to destroy it with his axe, which doesn't work. Legolas and Elrond know that this ring is not to be taken lightly, so what gives? In the end, they do decide that the best they could do is destroy the ring. But how do you destroy the ring? That's when Frodo decides to do the unthinkable. He volunteers to take it to Mordor, to Mount Doom to be exact, where it was first forged, and it's the only place where it can be destroyed. This is important because if you look at the hobbits as a species, of course, they're weak, they're not courageous, they're not fighters. But as Gandalf pointed out, you can learn all there is to learn about in a month. They will still surprise you. And in fact, this is kind of one of the major themes in The Lord of the Rings. One of the major themes intended by the author. You can have evil deeds, you can have these major events and a major evil, major forces. At the end of the day, what keeps the evil at bay, what keeps the world at peace, what keeps the world intact, is by the actions of the small people. Not of the great and powerful, but what the everyday people do. These are the small actions that added up together. These are what keep the world as a whole. You can have a major force, you can have a major power, you can be the almighty. But at the end of the day, what keeps everything together is the everyday people, the everyday citizen. Frodo volunteers, knowing that he doesn't have the strength to fight, knowing that he is just a hobbit. He still appoints himself. He says, I can carry the ring. I can go. Elrond and Gandalf refuse to even touch the ring because they know that that ring will try to manipulate them to use their power for good, when in really it's going to make them do bad things. Legolas also won't even touch it. Aragorn knows what has happened in the past and refuses to go down that road. Boromir is already corrected by the very idea of what the ring can do. Frodo volunteers by saying, I will manage the ring. I will take it to where it has to be destroyed. I do not know the way. Just tell me where to go, and I'll go. As long as it's his burden, Gandalf volunteers to go with him. Boromir, Aragorn with his sword, Gimli with his axe, Legolas. But not just them. All of a sudden, you see Sam, Merry, and Pippin come out of where they were hiding. Much to the surprise of everybody, because they didn't even notice that they were there, eavesdropping. And so now you have your 9 members. I may have missed 1 or 2, but there are nine members. Similar to how there is 9 Nazgul. And that's where we begin with the Fellowship of the Ring. well, what we call the Fellowship of the Ring. And they travel all the way to Moria. They actually weren't headed to Moria, but what we don't see in the movie, it's not in the movie, it is in the books, they are being followed by the enemy. And they are forced out of their path, and they're forced to go closer and closer to Moria. To the point where now their only option is to actually go through the mountains of Moria in order to be on their way. This is much to Gandalf's. He doesn't want to go through Moria because he knows what has been woken up in Moria. He knows of the dangers in the depths of Moria. Gimli is excited because Moria, that's where he has people. Legolas is not so happy because, well, it's a cave. He lives in the forest. They eventually do go to Moria and find that it's more of a tomb. Now, is this one the scenes that I remember the most from the Fellowship of the Ring? They're going to go into the mountain because they're in the side entrance. They're trying to enter, and Gandalf is saying, well, this is easy to go inside. You just have to say a password and go in, right? And in the Dwarven language, it says, speak friend and enter. And Gandalf interprets this as, okay, you know the password, say it, it will open up. It's kind of true, but it takes Frodo to say, you know, it says friend. What is the Dwarvish word for friend? And that's when it clicks, oh, melon. And that's the word that gets them inside. Okay, well, they go inside. But they notice when they go inside that it's silent. It's almost like it's a tomb, which it is. Once they find the final resting place, where Durin and his people, well, where they perished, where they died, they are all of a sudden under attack. They make their way out of Moria, and that's where they meet the Terror of the Deep, the Balrog. Gandalf stays to fight against the Balrog. He fends him off, but the Balrog takes him with him, giving them a chance to escape. With a heavy heart, they all escape, and they go to the woods of Lothlorien. In Lothlorien, that's where they meet Lady Galadriel. Now, this is different from the Lady Galadriel. Can't talk. This is different from the Lady Galadriel from The Rings of Power. This Lady Galadriel, she is full with power. She really is this magnificent figure. She really does cause a strong impression on them. And obviously she has power. Not just power as in she's almighty, but she does have powers. Like, she can read your mind, and she can use telepathy to communicate with you. And this is something that scares Boromir, because he says that she reveals something dark, and she basically reveals his worst fears. So Boromir is not really happy. They shared the sad news that Gandalf passed away when fighting against the Balrog. So they stay for a bit, and once they recover, they leave. They leave to continue their journey. When they do, they find that on their journey, they are being followed. By what? They're not really sure, but they're being followed. And in the camp that they set up, they're looking for firewood, and that's when Frodo is on his own looking for wood. Boromir also is on his own, but he catches up with Frodo. He tries to steal the ring from Frodo, but he kind of fails to do that, and Frodo runs away. Now, Aragorn does catch up with Frodo, and Frodo is very apprehensive, saying that, oh, you'll also want the ring. Aragorn has tried all he can to reject the ring, not wanting to even touch it. So when he looks at Frodo, deep in his eyes, he realizes what has to happen. Their ways have to split. And he tells Frodo, I would have gone with you until the very end. Frodo recognizes Aragorn's strength and resistance to the ring and tells him, I know you would have. When they suddenly are invaded, or attacked, I should say, by a group of orcs. So now, in an attempt to, save themselves, Aragorn gives Frodo the chance to run away. Well, he fights. Boromir fights, looking for Frodo. Everybody else is also looking for Frodo, but they have to fight. Boromir gets killed in the end, trying to save Merry and Pippin, who are quickly kidnapped by the orcs. Frodo has made his way to the boats, and Sam notices this, and he also follows Frodo. Now Frodo just goes back because Sam is about to drown, but ultimately he can't get rid of Sam, and they sail off into the distance. That is the end of the Fellowship of the Ring. It is quite different. In the book, there's a lot of songs. Even Aragorn sings. And these songs are tales. They're stories. Stories of Middle-earth. Legends of heroes of the past. Of lost love. Of forbidden love. You also see them meet other elves that are more like nomads, but they're going to the waters. They're going to take a ship back to Valinor. There's a lot more things that happen, a lot more adventure. In the movies, I get it. There isn't that much time, and if they included every single adventure they had, the 3.5 hour movie that it already is would be much longer. I mean, it would have been much better if they would have made it like a series. But that wasn't a thing back then. I remember that when The Lord of the Rings was first announced, all 3 movies were announced at the same time. And I was very much, I was little. I was probably in middle school, maybe. And it was impressive because, I mean, it only opened up into this great adventure. All 9 of them walking over the mountain. 2001, The Fellowship of the Ring. 2002, The Two Towers. 2003, The Return of the King. I mean, they announced the movies and when they were being released. But the orchestra, that magnificence, that grandiosity, that kind of big nature of an orchestra. And then the adventure that they're walking. And that they're going to an unknown adventure that I didn't know about. I had never read the books at that point. Again, I was in middle school. Having started this journey at such a young age was impressive. And I only fell in love with the series more when I began reading the books. At any rate, I don't want to make this too long of a video, so I'll leave it as that. It's going to take a while to upload all this. At any rate, leave your comments if you've seen the movie. What do you think about it? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Why? Do you plan on watching it? I believe right now it's on Netflix, but it really depends on where you are. Just, give your opinion. It's always nice to start a discussion. At any rate, take care, stay safe, stay healthy. Always remember, be kind to those around you. You never know what they're going through. Alright? Take care. Bye.